The greatest thrill of my life is standing behind that microphone with you guys behind me. Let's do it. All right, East Streeters, let's do this thing.
Speak a little bit first, if you could, Thom, about how you and Bruce, you have a long-standing relationship, how you envisioned this visual extension for Letter to You.
You know, I worked for Bruce for the past 20 years, and every time I start a project with him, we don't really discuss in detail the approach. You know, with this film, Letter to You, it was something of a brief conversation where he turned to me and said, the guys are going to come into the studio, let's film it. And that was the beginning of another journey in film with Bruce. And what I found in the past few years is that we've been able to expand on the genre of doc filmmaking by having Bruce include narration and score. And that feels very familiar to me. It's a voice that he's used in the book, on Broadway, the film we directed together, Western Stars. In Letter to You, he used this voice where he was able to expand on the songs, the new songs that they recorded and I filmed for 5 days. And that gives me an opportunity as a filmmaker to take it to different places and step outside the studio and try to capture what the music feels like to me as both a fan, a filmmaker, but also give Bruce this platform to expand on the lyrics, the themes, and really the conversation that he has with fans. And this has evolved over the years with my work with him on both Springsteen on Broadway, Western Stars, and of course originates in his book and the Broadway show.
Did you see the film as sort of another side or another avenue, basically, for people to sort of, maybe if they're not fans of Bruce Springsteen, to come to his work? And how did you want to present a film that maybe fans, people who never really heard of Bruce Springsteen, might catch it on Apple and say, hey, I want to check this out?
I always hope as a filmmaker that the films I'm making with Bruce, especially, anyone could step into the world and be interested, that it's not too inside Bruce's career in a space that you have to be an uber fan. I want to make films that are emotional, and I felt like this music connected to so many deep themes that I think everyone goes through. You know, a reflection of the past, an understanding of your time spent on the planet, and also an acknowledgement of a passing of friends, and also Bruce's acknowledgement of his own mortality. So these are fascinating themes to work with, and I thought if I used them in a way that tied it to Bruce's history, but didn't just land in a making of an album.
I imagine being in a situation where you're able to capture Bruce at work, not only by himself, but with the E Street Band, is pretty special. What stood out to you the most when you were capturing these scenes, the interplay between Mr. Springsteen and the E Street Band?
I've been around many situations in the past 20 years filming Bruce, but nothing prepared me for the sheer magic that unfolds when Bruce walks in with a notebook, opens it up, and starts singing a new song to this group of men and women. And they sit there and they scribble some notes. And then this thing that I hoped the film would convey happens, which is the magic of E Street. A song is born right before your eyes. And by the first take, you're listening to the lyrics. By the second take, you're singing along in your head. And you start to think, did these guys know this song? How did this come about? So there is a unexplainable magic that happens with the creative force of these individuals. And a big part of it is this secret language of knowing how to read each other, have all these years of playing together, and also understanding the sensitivities of Bruce's music and lyrics. It all works together and unfolds very fast. So I just wanted to be a fly on the wall, capture it with 3 cameras, not interrupt the process, and hopefully be able to share it in a film that a casual fan or the Uber fan could witness. And I wasn't prepared for the sheer sonic power of all these musicians in a room. The sound and the feeling is amazing.
Yeah, I bet that must be really cool. What's the, you've now done, 3 projects in a row with Mr. Springsteen, the Broadway show, Western Stars, and now Letter to You. What is this, the sort of common thread you see emerging from these later stage works from him?
The common thread that I see in a lot of the recent work that I've worked on with Bruce is being very present in the moment and creating, taking on new challenges. When I think about the Broadway show, I really think also about the book and how he took his writing and just expanded it to that form of storytelling in a book. And then the Broadway show being completely a different environment. And then when I get to the place of Western Stars, it was the same thing where he was challenging himself with the types of musical genres. So the common thread I see is that he is an artist constantly pushing forward, hard to imagine where he's going to go next, but also has a power and intensity in these songs to look at the past and reflect on the future. So he's very much alive in this moment, creating, but also tends to have a glance back to fully comprehend the journey. And for me as a filmmaker, that's very interesting to look at with him. And he gives me the 2 things that I need the most, which is trust and time. Those gifts are tremendous. So that the trust brought me into the room of the studio for Letter to You. And it also gave me the liberty to try different things as a filmmaker, tell a story in many different ways, documentary, voiceover, narration, that Bruce can explain the songs, and also score. So, when I look at this journey with Letter to You, I see a Bruce that I recognize in the old footage from 1978. It's about the music, it's an intense focus, and also it's constantly going in directions I couldn't imagine.
It's a 20-year partnership. Think back to that first moment of meeting Mr. Springsteen, and what did you think could happen? And what, looking back on it, did you imagine this and this kind of, decades-long partnership?
My first experience working with Bruce, I keep very close to me every day because there was a moment of seeing him arrive at the door and a focus that I recognized. And I knew that there was a journey ahead that could be really intense with that project, but also intense growth I had an opportunity to grow as an artist. So I was an editor when I first met Bruce, and meeting him for the first time, I immediately recognized that his focus was amazing, and he was already throwing out ideas and challenging me as both an editor and later on a director. And that is the key to my collaboration with him, which is really pushing each other in different directions to tell these stories and also represent the music. I try to really stay in the space of his storytelling and sonic landscape and try to really explain visually many of the most complex themes he's throwing at me in voiceover. So I remember meeting him for the first time, and I've been a fan for a long time, and I grew up with this music, and I will bring the fan to the door when I'm editing to experience the music. But when I'm with him, I'm grateful as an artist to collaborate, and I really work off of his energy and focus, which is very intense and always inspiring.
In the film, Bruce says it's a 45-year-long conversation he's been having with fans. As someone who came in, midway into that myself, I didn't see him. I think the first time I saw him play live was in 1993 or 94. And I think of the other times I've seen him since then. Why do you think Mr. Springsteen's music has resonated with all these different generations of music fans? For you in particular, what has it been about his music that has connected to you so much?
The deepest connection I have with the music, and I can speak as both a filmmaker and a fan, is that I was able to experience this music early on, and it's been timeless in many ways. That I was able to experience it at the age of 16, and it represented a certain amount of ideas. But the scope of the themes are so complex that I can look at it at 55 and relate to it. It's not trapped in a particular moment or generation. I think these are universal themes that for many people and many fans, they can go to again and again. And it all comes back to the power of his writing, the things he's thinking about and discussing in the songs, and also a constant feeling of pushing the direction of the work. There's no Born to Run 2, and there's no Born in the USA 2. There's not a repetition. So each one of these chapters are very interesting to experience, and you link your own personal experiences and life experiences to the music. And that's the power of an artist connecting with his audience. And that to me is when Bruce talks about a conversation that is reflected in that dialogue. He's having a conversation with his fans for 45 years. And that conversation, he's always exploring different things, and he brings you into it. And that's my role as a filmmaker, is to get in sync with his music and his storytelling, and try to just give him a moment to expand on some of the thoughts and expand on experiencing the music. And with this film, it was in the studio, and other films, it's in a live environment, but all of it works for the central theme of working with his music in a way that I can collaborate and give him this moment to expand that conversation.
So many great records. I think about Western Stars and how I was able to see that album in a different way, or rather listen to that album in a different way after seeing the movie. It's probably a controversial question, but what's your favorite Bruce Springsteen record and why?
You know, the idea of like, what's my favorite track or what's my favorite record with Bruce is, it's funny because when I'm making a film, I fall in love with certain songs, and we'll just go to them every single day. And with this record, there's so many. I have had a See You in My Dreams is a reference for me right now that I go to a lot, because it just conveys both a powerful moment in my experience of watching them record the music, but also it's just such a powerful track that I live with currently every day. And it's funny, Bruce's music gives you that opportunity, like an old friend, to revisit. And some days I'll have moments where I just go to tracks that are older, often Nebraska, or it's really the mood. And many times I'll be working on a non-Bruce project and just turn to him for inspiration and tone. So I'm not much different than anyone else in being a fan. I just go to a lot of his music and find it really inspiring.
Okay, thank you, Thom, for taking the time. Again, I appreciated the movie, had a great look to it, and of course it was a nice extension for the record and for fans of Bruce Springsteen. Take care and have a great day.
Take care. Nice meeting you, Mark. Bye-bye.
Okay, take care.